We know the president's health care law has been upheld by the Supreme Court, and Republicans in the House vow to repeal it. Regardless of what happens, this is sure to be one of the biggest talking points in the race for the White House. Joining us right now to offer some perspective, talk about the political implications of the Supreme Court decision, Dr. Matt Corrigan from UNF with their Political Science Department. Good to have you here.
Hi, Bruce.
Potential game changer come November?
I don't think it changes that much, really, because I think people had their minds made up on this already and kind of factored that into how they're going to vote. It obviously fires up the right, but I think Republicans were already fired up. So the question is, can the president explain this better? Can he get more support for it? But it would have been a lot worse for him if he had lost, because then I think you get a narrative of, he wasted all this time in his first term. So it's much better for him that he won the decision.
All right, let me approach November from this angle. Did Justice Roberts and the majority hand Mitt Romney a present that he can run with?
It handed him an issue to get people fired up about. But again, this is a general presidential election. I think turnout's already going to be high. I think Republicans were already loaded for bear. This just adds to the intensity. But Romney's got some problems trying to attack this law because he passed one that's very similar in Massachusetts. And even the biggest criticism of it, the mandate, was passed in Massachusetts. So he's going to have to figure that out.
Let me ask you about that, because on the campaign trail, Romney's done a 180, and the fact of the matter is that this health care reform law, as you alluded to, was modeled after a number of the things that Mitt Romney put in place. Is the American public naive about that? Do they not want to hear about it?
His argument is that states can make that decision, but it shouldn't be for the whole country. I think that's a difficult argument to make because, again, a lot of the major criticisms about the Obamacare legislation are in the Massachusetts legislation. So he's going to have to figure out a way around that.
So it's not unlike the whole immigration thing. Is it okay for the states to go ahead and have jurisdiction, or should the federal government? I mean, the issue is different, but when we're talking about jurisdiction,
right,
there's some apples to apples here.
And I think the president would be wise to be flexible going forward. Not say, okay, this is the law and we won't have any changes. If he's going to get people to accept it, he's going to have to be flexible, and he's going to have to figure out all sorts of issues with Medicare and Medicaid. The question is, can he make those changes if he gets reelected?
Let's talk about some of the political rhetoric that's out. 15, 20 minutes after the Supreme Court decision was made public, Mitt Romney had an ad running where he's talking about the health care reform law, and he says, if I get to the White House, the thing I'll do on day one is repeal it. Can he?
He can slow the implementation down. He can't repeal it outright because it's a piece of legislation. And Republicans are talking about repeal. It's difficult. They can pass it in the House. It's not going to make it through the Senate. You probably need 60 votes because of the filibuster to get it through the Senate. Some people are arguing you only need 51 because it's a tax and you can move it through something called reconciliation. I think, if Romney wins, we'll be fighting that battle. But it's not easy to repeal.
Did it surprise you that the Supreme Court was put in such a political position in rendering this decision?
Not in politics of today. I mean, everything seems to be very partisan, very divisive. And the Roberts decision, I think legal scholars are saying it may not be as solid as they would like, but it's a political masterstroke, because what he did was satisfy some conservatives by saying the Commerce Clause doesn't apply here, so that limits some of the power of the national government. And obviously he pleased the administration because he found it constitutional. This was some really interesting writing and some really a real political decision.
He didn't please the conservative base. Matt Corrigan, thanks very much. Appreciate you being here. 7:20 coming up at about 7:30. We're going to talk with our financial expert Joe Cryer about the implications of the Supreme Court's ruling, things you need to know, how it impacts your wallet and your health care.